You're listening to the Iterators of the Imperium.
Alright, you gits. We've been listening to this here broadcast, and I think we're all thinking the same thing. Not enough orcs. So, enough of this humie business. Let's hear about orcs being good old-fashioned orcs. Now, get on with it!
Hi, I'm Mess, and I'm here with my lovely co-host Ryan, and you're listening to Season Quinqui of the Iterators of the Imperium podcast. And for anybody who doesn't know what Quinqui means, which is pretty much everybody, I guess, it means 5 in Latin. Yes, I know. We're nerds, okay? And this is the podcast in which Ryan is the expert on the Warhammer 40K, and I am the noob, or actually I think I've moved up to intermediate, trying to learn about the Warhammer universe. But this is a completely new season. Welcome. What are we doing, Ryan? Season 5, or Quinqui?
Alright, well, after... Goddamn Quinqui. Why do you like this, man?
I don't know, but you like it. You love it for it.
I do. So, like I've been saying in the last season, we are getting on to some modern day stuff this time. You know? It's getting exciting. We're talking about, the real 40k aspect of 40k. Because we've mentioned like 3 things that have happened in the modern day in like 4 seasons. Which is pretty poor for a podcast about Warhammer 40k when you've barely mentioned the 40th millennia.
Well, the premise of this podcast has always been to get me caught up to speed.
Yeah.
So I think it's been the right execution, but now it is getting juicy because we're getting into some details that's more recent and more relevant, actually, I should say, for the listeners who actually wants to hear stuff about the current day of Warhammer.
Absolutely.
So, yes.
Yeah. It's getting exciting, you're right. So, after last season, I wasn't too bothered what we talked about. Like, I'm happy to talk about anything, So, I thought, I'll let Mez decide. So I asked him what he wanted to talk about. And I was expecting to get like, can we look at the Bloody Angels? Because, your boy Sanguinius. Or, can we talk about Space Wolves? Because that's a bit, like, culturally a bit close to home kind of thing. Maybe there's something interesting there. Plus, they're just fun. Or even maybe, like, Sisters of Battle. Because who doesn't love badass battlemans, right? But no, we got Orks. Orks.
Yeah. It reminds me of you, Ryan, Scottish brethren.
Culturally close to home for me.
Yeah.
Like, these dudes are just based off of, like, Scottish football fans. That's all they're based off of, right? Like, so much so. Do you want to ken what, like, in the modern day, there is a big orc war boss who's, like, one of the biggest, most important dudes in the orc, like, world right now, right? And his clan, or his, like, army, his Wa, their, like, war chant is, here we go, which is what everyone in Scotland chants before anything. If there's a football match, guarantee the crowd is chanting that before kickoff. If there is, like, a concert, I guarantee you the crowd is chanting it before the mainliners come on. Like, that's just what we do. I don't know why we do it, but it's what we do.
But it's what you do. I also want to know, isn't it something where, like, there was a game where the orcs, they didn't really speak words. It was just gibberish, but they got a Scotsman to say it with, like, a Scottish accent, just speaking gibberish.
Honestly, that's what a lot of it is.
It's just like, well, obviously I can't speak with a Scottish accent, but, just gibberish in Scottish accent. Because why not?
Yeah. Plus, a lot of the way that orcs speak is actually just, like, Scottish colloquialisms as well. A lot of what they say is just, like, Scottish slang.
Yeah.
Which is really funny, because they are literally they're definitely based on the Scottish. Which is why I get annoyed with people that say "wa" as if that's what it's meant to be. Because it may actually, like, as far as the creators say, that's meant to be how it's pronounced, but I'm pretty sure it's meant to be war, but shouted by a Scotsman. Because if a Scotsman shouts, if you shout war, you lose the R. The noise just kind of trails off, you know. So it would be written as like WAAGH rather than with an R, since we just don't bother enunciating. Yeah. So I'm dead. No one will ever convince me otherwise.
Nah, I think you're right. You're right.
So the whole idea here is we're gonna get into the Orks, right? We're gonna work our way through what the Orks have been up to in the modern day, right? And it'll build to something, right? It's not just gonna be like I was gonna go with like the story of like the biggest, baddest orc around, and then I realized that it's gonna leave gaps if we do it that way. So it makes more sense to look at like everything the Orks have been up to in the modern day, but some of it is like a scene setting, so we'll like mention it but go past it quickly, if you get what I mean. In other areas it's like deep diving into like an orc character's storyline, if you get what I mean. Yeah. So you'll get like the whole picture of how things are like ramping up for the Orks, you know? Cool. So I figured we do need to, since we haven't talked about Orcs since like season 2, we do need to mention like a quick reminder of what Orcs are about, you know? Quick summary to get us back into the right knowledge base here, you know?
Yeah. They get bigger with every fight, like I was saying. I'm sorry.
What?
No, they're like every fight, like when they're in war, when they win a fight or something like that, they get bigger, right?
Yes, they get physically bigger every time they win a fight. It's really fun.
Yeah, I just wanted, because like that's why one of the reasons why I like the Orks is just because they remind me of Saiyans from Dragon Ball Z.
That's fair.
You know?
Yeah,
it's like
there's a bit of that.
You get stronger when you like every fight. That they lose the fight though. You get stronger after every lost fight.
Yeah,
and then they could get like big to a giant ape, and I just want to see a giant ass orc. You know, like a great ape, no, a great orc. Yeah, you know.
I mean, that's the gist of it. Because like, look at these boys. This is like your typical orc war boss. He's a biggin.
I reckon I could take him. You know.
I should go for it.
Nah, I pass. I can't make it that day. God damn. That's a humongous.
I think I speak for all of us when I say we are either sick or busy that day. Thank you.
I can't make it.
So, to go through a quick summary for these guys, they are big green football hooligans. That's the gist, right? They get bigger every time they win a fight, and they, vaguely speaking, speak some form of Gothic. Not really, they kind of just mock humans with it, but you know, whatever. Their weapons are basically made of scrap metal welded together and powered by belief. Because anything that they believe becomes true.
They write their magic as well, but they don't know. That's so stupid to know.
Yeah, it's like subconscious magic. It's like a hive mind that they don't even know is there. But
it's so good.
You know what I think it's based off of? You know that old saying about the power of idiots in large numbers?
Oh my god, yeah.
I think that's what it is. It's that if you get enough orcs together, anything they believe is true because of the power of idiots in large numbers.
Oh my god. It's like Peter Pan with the food, right? Just have to believe it exists, and then you can eat as much as you want.
That's the gist, yeah.
I mean, it works.
So, like, there are some orcs that are, like, actual, like, shamans that can, like, cast fucking warp fire around and shit like that. But, in general, all orcs are, in a loosely based sense, kind of magical. In this basis of, like, they have this kind of shared link through the warp, that they can have these kind of subconscious effects. But it can take almost any form. So it can be stuff like the Wa magic, that when orcs follow behind a great leader, all of their strength is kind of amplified, but the leader is amplified significantly more than all the orcs in the Wa. but it still affects all of them. They all get bigger and stronger just for being in a group, because they think they're bigger and stronger behind this, like, big beast of a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it also extends to, like, stuff like, I didn't run out of ammo, so your gun will keep firing even though it's empty. Or, like, painting it red makes it go faster. And then it does. Yeah. Or my personal favorite is when it's like, these 5 guns taped together will act as one bigger gun.
And it does.
It does. It fucking do. Or the cars. Their cars are hilarious. It's got like 3 wheels and engine taped to the back end of it and like a propeller on the front, and the thing goes. Like, I didn't even attach to the wheels. It still goes.
Man. We should do like... Well, actually, hold on. For the listeners right now, as the listeners coming back probably know at this point, we do also have the podcast on... I mean, depending on where you're listening to this on, we do also have it on YouTube, for example. Come check us out. If you don't, there's visuals. You can actually see our faces and stuff and shit.
How unfortunate for them.
You are right. Actually, we should put up like just $5 each or whatever it is, right? For the best comment on like an orc theory that they have to imagine and execute, right? Like you say, like if I have a car, right? I paint stripes on it, it goes 50% faster. You know, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like just ridiculous. All right. We'll pick a winner then, right?
So, additional detail I should mention about orcs. They use their teeth as money. They really are freaks.
I love them. I love them.
Yep. I hope you know this is what you're in for. It's only going to get worse.
I love them.
Fair warning, it's not only orcs we're going to talk about in this season, because there's a bunch of like different things involved in like what is typically called an orc army. It's like fantasy had the term greenskins that was like an overarching thing for all of them. Warhammer 40K doesn't use it as much, but it is still the greenskins, and there's a bunch of them. So, so we have the orcs, pretty standard. There are also Gretchens, which are like a servant class for the orcs. Yeah. Yeah, they're just like little goblins. They'll shank you in the kidneys and that. Also, they are like, they live in fear of everything, so they'll always run from a fight, basically. But they also live in fear of the orcs, because orcs are like, they were born to hurt Gretchens. That's the hierarchy, right? And Gretchens are born knowing that, so they just accept it. But at the same time, like, because they're all religious, all the greenskins worship Gork and Mork. It's said that like, for the Gretchens, Gork and Mork's rule is like, they would judge them if they didn't try to like escape from their orc masters or try to like kill them when their back's turned and stuff like that. So once in a while, a Gretchen will just like shank his orc master in the kidney and run. But like, it'd be weird if they didn't.
That's such a weird relationship, but
yeah, right. But like, they all just accept it. The orc's like, oh yeah, I wouldn't have respected him if he hadn't tried to cut off my left leg. But like, yeah, it's the whole thing.
Whatever works, man.
Yeah, Gretchens are fun. So there's also the Snotlings, which are also a slightly smaller form of little goblin creature. These guys are... They're not as much of a servant class. They are, like, lower on the tier list, so, like, a Gretchen can beat up a Snotling all at once, and Snotling won't do shit about it. But Snotlings are basically just there to act as, like, animal herders and, like, farmers. They farm the mushrooms that the orcs eat. Yeah. So, they're like a bottom-of-the-barrel working class. You know? Like, just laborers, basically. But being an animal herder as a greenskin is pretty rough. It's like the most dangerous job, because I don't know if you can imagine what these things would call an animal, but it's basically this. It's a squig.
What the? Okay.
Yeah. So those little dudes like herd and breed these things for the orcs to use, because these things are big. Like orcs can ride these into battle, but you also get like a million different forms of this. You can get a version of this for anything. So there are some that will be used as like pack animals. There are some that will be used as like a war mount. There are some that will have explosives tied to them and launched at the enemy's gates.
Yeah.
And it goes all the way as to like some of them are just food. Some of them are used as a backpack because you just stuff things into it to carry it for you. There are some that have hair that orcs will like make it bite their skull, so the orc has a wig.
Yeah.
There's basically a squig for any purpose. Purpose. And they take like any form you would ever want.
Nice.
Yeah. And it extends slightly further to a thing called a squigoth.
Yeah.
Which is a biggin.
Holy shit! That's kind of like. Wait, I've seen these. Oh, you have showed me this before. No mind.
I don't think I have actually.
No, I think. Haven't you? No, you have. You definitely have.
Have I? I don't remember that. I trust you though.
Or there is some other things in Warhammer that we've been talking about earlier, where there's like things that move with there's entire cities on it.
Oh yes, aye. But they're not that big. It's just like it's like an armored personnel carrier kind of size. It's a big one, but like it's got a couple orcs on top of it, but that's about it.
I might be thinking of something else, but it is in Warhammer. It is Warhammer related.
I'm sure it'll come back to us later.
Matter. It's fine. Yes.
Yeah. But these are all the kind of things that we'll be dealing with, right? It'll be bits of all of them at some point or another getting involved. Primarily, it will be orcs, right? The rest of them don't do too much, but like they're around, they're involved. They can be important in some stories, so it's important to mention them. And I want to make this clear: this is all created by the wonder of Gork and Mark, the orc gods.
Yep.
I can't remember which one's which, but I believe Gork is brutally cunning and Mark is cunningly brutal. That's the way they're described. So Gork will punch you in the face and Mark will punch you in the back of the head as you fall backwards.
Yin and yang, I guess. I don't
Yeah,
know.
exactly. And this is what like orcs live by. It's this.
Yeah.
They need to strive for this. It is said that orcs are either smart or strong. So the strong ones will follow, the idea of brutal cunning, and the smart ones will follow the rule of cunningly brutal.
Yeah.
That's the idea. So there are a few ways to break up orcs into different groups, right? So obviously, first is like hierarchy, which is just orcs are at the top, then you've got your Gretchens, your Snotlings, and squigs aren't even part of it, they're just animals. But there's also like a hierarchy of rank within orcs themselves. So you've got like the war boss running everything, and then you'll have just normal orcs that are acting as like troopers under him. And there's also like the weird boys, which are I've got a picture of one here. There you go. This is a particular brand of weird boy. So weird boy is the term for an orc that has like a special ability, right? And the important distinction here is that orcs have a genetic memory, right? Orcs don't have to learn how to wield a weapon. Orcs don't have to learn how to drive a car. They don't have to learn how to build a gun or any of this, right? They just know it. They come out of the ground knowing it, right? But once in a while, an orc comes out of the ground knowing some extra shit too, like how to be a medic, or, being a psyker orc and just becomes a big rad shaman, or knowing how to be an engineer and build the cars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right? So these unique ones are the weird boys. That's the idea here. So they typically are a higher rank than your standard like orc trooper because they're a bit more useful, you know. But because they have these like additional knowledge and abilities, typically they can like use them to exert their will upon other normal orcs. You know, yeah. So they usually end up with a slightly higher kind of rank than normal orcs. And yeah, and under them is just your normal orc fighters, just your standard football hooligans with an axe and a gun and a dream.
And a lot of courage.
And a lot of courage. Well, is it courage if they're too stupid to feel fear in the first place? Because courage is overcoming fear, isn't it?
I guess it is, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's courageous. I think it's just, like, mindless violence. Which works
it's just
for them.
Stupidity.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, see, right.
Yeah.
Actually, I should make it clear. There's another part to them that's like a genetic thing, which is they're kind of like the World Eaters that not being violent and stuff is really, it's not painful, but it's depressing to them. So like your World Eaters get mad pain when they're not being aggressive and violent, right? Similar to the Orks, but the Orks just get really sad. They get really despondent.
They get depressed.
Because they have this thing, I can't remember what the Orc word for it is, but basically they have like a battle lust, and when it's not sated, they're just depressed. So fighting makes them happy.
It's such... I don't know. It's weird, right? It's weird.
Yeah, but that's why
what it
orcs
is.
are always looking for, like, the next big fight. It's all they want to do is fight. You know?
Yeah.
It's their whole life. They're born to fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other way to organize orcs is by their clans, because there's a bunch of different clans of them that all specialize in different things. So you've got the Goths, which is how Scottish people typically say goth, as in the cunts that wear black all the time and all that. The Goths are basically your standard murdery orcs. They just love a good brawl and a good like fight. That's it. Standard, right?
Yeah.
But they're just better at it than the others, because the others are like special for other things. There's the Evil Sons, which are obsessed with speed. They just want to go as fast as possible. So these are the guys that are like tying a rocket engine to the back of their car to see what happens.
Guess why not?
Yeah. There's the Bad Moons, which typically have the best customized gear and vehicles, because their special thing is their teeth grow back faster than any other clan, so they're rich.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're loaded.
But their currency is like growing on them, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they just buy like special gear from all the other clans. They're like, all right, I'm gonna go to like the Bad Moons. I'm gonna go to the Evil Sons and make them build me a really fancy car that'll go faster than anyone else's and all this shit. They just go around to all the other clans and buy stuff off them because they're loaded.
Life's not fair, huh?
Yeah. There are the Snakebite clan, which are good fun. These are like old school orcs, right? They're honestly as close to feral orcs as you can get. They basically want to be in Warhammer Fantasy, but they're stuck in 40k. So they're like, fuck your technology, we're going old school. And they will not use new technology or that. They just want to like beat stuff to death with a rusty axe.
Okay.
Yeah. There are blood axes. Oh, actually, no, I should mention, snakebites also have a thing for animal rearing. So snakebites will have like a lot of like weird types of squigs fighting alongside them, or like the squigoths and stuff like that. Just so you know.
Squigoffs.
Yeah. There are blood axes, which are the not very orky orcs. These are the orcs that everyone else is like, man, they're not acting like real orcs, but like they're more to the cunning side than the brutal side, right? These are the ones that are like, will use strategy and tactics to win the battle, and all the rest of the orcs are like, worse. Who strategizes? I didn't know there was a plan other than head first assault. God.
Yeah. Why go in for maybe a more effective attack that takes time when I could just go in and hit now?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, there's a Gretchen saying, which oh god, I would try and say it in their language, but I'm not going to because I can't remember it perfectly right now. But
Yeah.
it translates to hide now, stab him later. Which is pretty good, and I think that like blood axes, that's quite close to home for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but blood axes actually, like, there's some of them that act as like diplomats, for lack of a better term. Like blood axes have members that will talk to the Inquisition and stuff like that, and make deals with them, and like rat out other orcs and stuff for like the trade of equipment or a planet or two. Like, these dudes are proper sketchy for orcs.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have some that are like translators that can speak Gothic, so they can talk to humans. It's quite nuts. But yeah, these are the ones that are like your stealthy ones and stuff like that. The rest of the orcs find them quite weird. And the last clan is the Death Skulls. And these guys are like really good engineers and scientists, but it's like through sheer luck. Because they're not smarter than anyone else. They've just done it more, because their thing is that they're grave robbers. They loot battlefields for everything and anything. They're like hoarders. So after they've murdered like an enemy army, they scour the joint, stealing everything that they can. But that means that they have a ton of extra crap lying around at the end of the day. And at some point, they just started bolting it together to see what it did. And it led to them being, like, pretty good engineers and scientists. Purely because they had an abundance of crap to weld together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, these dudes will, they will have a lot of, like, weird techie stuff kicking around, and a lot of, like, poncy vehicles and things, and tank-type stuff, or mechs. They have, like, their own version of Titans called mechs. But it's MEK because they can't spell it properly because they're orcs, obviously. And they come in a few different forms. But yeah, these dudes have a lot of those fuckers kicking around. Because again, too much scrap metal. What else are you going to do other than build a giant walking orc monster? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just what you do, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the gist of Orks. Just as a brief summary for us to kick off again. So we're all on the same page again. Yeah. There is one more bit I need to remind you of for this, right? And I'm going to ask, do you remember Season 1, Episode 10? Of course you do. It's when we talked about the War of the Beast. We've mentioned the War of the Beast a few times since then.
That's a few times, but that was goddamn right. That was like, do you remember the 5th of August, 2021?
It's probably quite close to the actual date, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it has to be. It was in 21. We launched in 21.
Yeah.
God, we're old, right? Oh my.
I know, right?
Shit.
So the War of the Beast obviously happened back in like the 32nd millennia, but there's a couple of extra things that there was no point in mentioning back then as specific details, whereas now it's worth mentioning them. So we're gonna do like a really brief summary of the War of the Beast, but I'm gonna make a point of telling you these additional details, but it's purely for the sake of it now matters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's a bit before that, right? This is the earliest part we're going to talk about orcs, and we're going to go over this really quickly. The earliest part in orc history we're going to mention is a planet called Orkz. Okay. This is a middle of nowhere, totally irrelevant planet. I just need to mention it.
Yeah.
See, back in the Dark Age technology, so before the Emperor, before the Legions, before all of this shit, back in the Dark Age technology when humanity was, like, taking over the galaxy, we took over this planet. And we started to build there, as we tend to do. You know, humanity's thing. We move into somewhere we don't own, and we decide we own it, and we build shit. It's our thing.
Yeah.
And this planet was really handy for us, because it was a great waypoint for warp travel. Because of, like, there's a thing called a Mandeville point, which is the safest distance from a planet you can reasonably move in or out of the warp without ending up, like, coming out on the planet or inside a star or something like that, right? This planet happened to be really useful for this. So it acted as like a waypoint kind of thing. So we lived there for a while, we build up a bit, we build some fancy cities, we build some spaceports and shit. Typical human stuff, right? And then Orks turn up out of nowhere and wreck the joint. Right? They ransacked the place. They scoured us from the planet. But it was like an orc wave. It was like an orc army just happened to be going by and killing everything they found. So they just kept going. They fucked us up. They kicked us off the planet, and they just kept moving. But as what happens with orcs, they left spores behind. So in time to come, orcs would appear here.
Yes.
So orcs start growing in, like, the caves and whatnot, in the dark places. And as time moved on, because this planet was such a good spot for, like, warp travel and stuff, eventually the Eldar turn up and they move in. So the Eldar take over this world now, not knowing there's orcs in all the caves and everything like that. Right? It's not just Eldar, you also end up with, like, Hrud moving in and stuff like that. I don't think I've mentioned the Hrud to you before, but they are the worst aliens ever.
Okay. I don't recall hearing that before, but yeah.
Yeah, I think there was an episode in, like, Season 2 that I mentioned them vaguely in the background, or maybe in, like, the first ever episode. I might have mentioned them as, like, a minor alien race, but, like, don't worry about it, they're just the worst guys, but they're not really important to the story. The point is, a bunch of, like, spacefaring alien races ended up taking over this planet after humanity got kicked out by the orcs. But none of them knew there was orcs on the fucking planet. Now, this is kind of how this planet, Heroclea, stays for you know, the foreseeable future, right? Because humanity obviously gets fucked up pretty bad after the Dark Age technology, so we don't go back. So it's just these alien races end up living there, not knowing there's orcs on the planet, kind of thing. And this is the way it stays, all the way up until the Great Crusade kicks off. And the Emperor's sending out his legions. And eventually the Dark Angels find this planet and decide they're going to kill the orcs and take over again. We're annexing this place for the second time. And that's what they do. Big war goes on. Dark Angels, like, take to the ground, murder all the orcs, and take over the planet again. So we rebuild. Right? But we build it up bigger and better than we did before, because now we're, like, Empire style rather than, like, Dark Age technology humans. We're all Emperor-y now. So we take over again. We build a bunch of hive cities, move tons of people in, and both of the planet's moons get turned into spaceports. Right? We're going whole haul with this planet now. And that's about all that happens with this planet for the time being. It kind of stays like that all the way through the heresy and stuff. Humanity's wiped out the orcs, or at least they think they have, and we've built bigger, better cities and, you know, annexed the moons and everything. Now, we come to the War of the Beast, right?
Yes.
So this is like a couple thousand years later. War of the Beast kicks off. So, as you might remember, 32nd Millenia, all the Primarchs are gone, Horus Heresy is over. Well, the evil Primarchs are still around, but they're not related to this or relevant, so fuck them. There are no legions anymore, it's just the chapters now, and from a long buried past comes a new enemy, and this is, you know, the Beast. Now, interesting thing I should mention about this, because I probably didn't mention it before. Do you remember the start of the heresy where Horus yeeted an orc from a set of battlements to end a war, and that's why he got called the War Master?
Yeah, that reminds me.
Yeah, because we kept making jokes about him yeeting an orc from battlements. So this whole thing, it's in an area called Ulanor. It's called the Ulanor Crusade, was to go clear this planet or this sector of orcs, because there was a big-ass orc uprising there. And the whole thing ends with Horus personally killing the orc war boss, which, as you may remember, when you kill the leader of an orc army, the magic kind of cuts off and they go back to being quite weak. So it's like the morale just totally breaks when you kill the leader. So after he killed the leader, the rest of the orcs got routed pretty quickly and they cleared them out pretty well. So that was the Ulanor Crusade. Thing is, as orcs tend to do, you never really get rid of them all. Like, they're always going to come back, you know? That's the thing. They're always going to... Once you have orcs, you've got orcs forever. It's like cockroaches, right?
Oh my god, yeah.
The only way to get rid of them is to burn down the house, and even then, you'll just have cockroaches in the ashes of your house, right?
Yeah.
Like, you never actually get rid of them. Well, turns out, a couple thousand years later, same planet... spawns this big-ass monster orc called the Beast. The biggest fucking orc ever seen. So that's good fun. Turns out, Horus didn't do a very good job of killing them. Nope. A lot of bad shit stemmed from that planet. Orc Uprising, Horus, Second Orc Uprising. They're not doing well from this place.
Should really just have destroyed the planet, you know?
Right!
Like, when you think about it.
Going forward, a lot of people are gonna try that, by the way. Fair warning. This planet is like a linchpin planet in this whole thing.
Yeah.
So, out of nowhere, this massive, even bigger than the last time, Orc Uprising turns up on this same planet, Ulanor. Now led by the Beast. So, we have Wa the Beast, because the Wa is always named after the dude leading it. So, this Wa starts going out into the galaxy and wrecking everything. They are ransacking the place left, right, and centre. And they start attacking the homeworld as well. They start attacking Terra. As we've mentioned many times this particular part, Imperial Fists have to join back together into a legion to go and defend Terra. The primary chapter, so the one that is still named the Imperial Fists, gets basically wiped out until there's like one guy left. Then they rebuild with parts of all the other chapters, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I get it's more of like it's a principle kind of thing, but you still got the same number of troops, so anyway.
Yeah.
Eventually, possibly my favourite guy, Maximus Thane, takes the fight to Ulanor to kill the Beast once and for all. And with the help of a bunch of Sisters of Silence they had to go rescue, Sub-Psychers, and the resurrected Primarch Vulcan, they do manage to actually take the fight to the Beast. It's a whole thing. So they come up with this plan, which is we'll use the null effect of the Sisters of Silence to, like, backfeed the orcs, like, Wa magic. So that's they're going to, like, reverse the benefits of it, is the idea, right? It's the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, massive war goes on. Maximus Thane and the fucking Imperial Fist battle their way right to the heart of the Beast's palace. They have to fight a bunch of giant orcs that are titled as the Primorks, like Primarchs, because the Beast is the orc emperor, it seems. It's the whole thing. They kill them. They get to the actual Beast. Thane ends up in, like, one-on-one combat with this gigantic, like, building-sized orc.
Okay.
Luckily, this is when the ritual that the Sisters of Silence were doing kicks in, and the Beast's head explodes. Proper backfeed.
Yeah.
Like, no fucking around here. So, the Beast is out of the game. The War of the Beast is over. They managed to mop up the rest of the orcs pretty easily. Because, again, without a leader, they're pretty shit.
Yeah, morale.
Yeah. Yeah, morale is a really important thing for orcs.
Yeah.
I like to think of it as drunk people on a night out. As soon as like a couple of them start getting like chucked out of the bar, or one of them starts vomiting and shit like that, it falls apart very quickly. You really lose steam, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the way I like to think of it. So yeah, very vaguely skimmed that. We're not doing detail on the War of the Beast again, because we've already done it in Season 1. We probably didn't do very much detail thinking back on it, because it was Season 1. So maybe at some point down the line we'll like deep dive into the War of the Beast properly, but we're not doing it now. We're modern day orcs today. That's what we're doing here. So, the important bit that I didn't mention the first time we did this is there is this planet, Orkz, that I mentioned at the start there. Well, during this, like, sea of orcs taking over the galaxy and ransacking everything, they came across this planet again, right? So, the Wa the Beast found Orkz and wrecked the joint, because fuck the humans. So they just wiped the place again, right? They also took over a bunch of nearby planets as well. It wasn't just this one. They took over a lot of shit in the area, but they basically just scoured this section of the galaxy, kicking out all the humans, burning all their cities to the ground, and just conquering the worlds and taking over with orcs in charge now. So, this planet is now back in orc control, but it's like properly in orc control now. It's not that there's some orcs growing in the caves. There is now like half an orc army living here. We've moved in, lads.
We've taken over.
Yeah, this is our place now. They basically just evicted humanity and took over for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is the way that Orkz stays going forward. It is now just like populated by a bunch of orc tribes for all the different clans that just fight among themselves. Pretty standard stuff.
Yeah.
Also, the 2 moons that had spaceports on them get taken over by orcs. So there's orcs on them as well. Just so you know. So everything in this whole area is just orked up now. Right? There's orcs as far as the eye can see. And then a little bit further.
Yeah.
And because orcs don't like saying Orkz, because who the fuck says that? The planet is renamed to Urk. Just so you know. And yeah, that's basically the way Urk stays for the foreseeable future. We will come back here later. It is important for setting the scene. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Cool.
Urk. So it's like org.
Well?
Nothing.
Okay. It does sound like orc, right? I just realized what you said. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, we're going totally other side of the galaxy now, right? And we're getting to the modern day. So, we're going to kick this whole thing off. And remember, some of these are going to be like a quick thing of like scene setting, right? Because it's building to these bigger events, right? So, we're going to be skipping through some shit pretty quick. So, our first thing in the modern day is actually in the year 797 of the 41st millennia. So the year 41,797. And at this point, the Ultramarines notice there is a massive uprising of orcs. Like, there's usually orcs, right? There's always orcs around somewhere. But there's like an inordinate amount of orcs attacking the Ultima Segmentum. This whole area of space is getting bombarded by these fuckers. And they don't know why or where they're coming from or what's causing the uprising. But the Ultramarines are all of a sudden on the back foot, just desperately trying to fight off a huge number of orcs they don't know the cause of. Okay? So, one side of the galaxy is now getting attacked by orcs from nowhere.
Yeah.
Then we move forward to the next year. So a year later, there's more shit kicking off orcs. There's an orc warlord called Big Scorcha. I actually think I have a...
This picture?
I don't. Never mind. Normal orc war boss. Fuck it. Sorry. When you search for Big Scorcha, because he's not like a major character, you just get pictures of orcs with big flamethrowers. Rather than the guy named
Yeah.
Big Scorcher. You just get pictures of big scorchers. It's unfortunate. But yeah, he is named after his big flamethrower, just so you know. He assembles a big-ass army and a series of Space Hulks. Do you know what a Space Hulk is?
No.
Okay, I've probably mentioned it again in passing a couple of times in vague detail. A Space Hulk is what happens when a bunch of ships, like a bunch of like spaceships, get kind of stuck together in the warp.
Okay.
So like if you come out of the warp, say you have to jump out of the warp because you're getting attacked by demons or something, you don't know where you're going to end up in real space. You might just end up inside another ship.
Yeah.
So then you end up with two massive ships stuck together, and the more that happens, the more likely it is to happen, because you've got like ships that are just accidentally jumping in and out of the warp because their systems are all fucked up.
Yeah.
So you end up with like this big amalgamation of a bunch of ships stuck together. It's referred to as a Space Hulk. Orks have a habit of actively using these things as spaceships. Right? Which basically just lends itself to carnage because they can barely control the thing. Because you've got like 17 ships stuck together, all of them have operational warp drives, but none of them have operational controls for the warp drives. So they're just flashing in and out of the warp at random.
Sounds dangerous.
Yeah, it is, but the Orks don't really give a shit. All of humanity is terrified of these things because you never know what's going to be in them or what they're going to do. And Orks are like, cool, a taxi. They just use them to get to the next fight. That's all they do.
I mean, if it works.
Yeah,
it works.
So this Ork war boss, Big Scorcher, builds up a big-ass army and gathers up a series Space Hulks and uses them to directly attack the Blood Angels' homeworld of Baal. Because he's got so many of the Space Hulks, and they are basically just giant cubes of armor being launched at a planet, they get past their orbital defenses pretty easily. So Scorcher manages to get thousands upon thousands of Orks onto the Space Marine homeworld of the Blood Angels. And he is only defeated by the chapter releasing all 41 of their dreadnoughts. So, pretty close to home assault on a Space Marine homeworld there. Orks are getting brave, and they're not fucking around. These are the important details. Then we move forward a bit further. So we're jumping forward 17 years now to 815 M41. And this is a great event. I love this. It's called the War of Daka. Do you know what Daka is?
No.
It's the noise a gun makes.
Okay.
Like it's the noise of shooting a gun. Daka, 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 daka. No? Alright. So Orks use the word Daka to mean like firepower.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's the noise a gun makes. So that's what this one's all about. But it kicks off with this dude, Grog Iron Teeth. Known because he had iron teeth. So when we look at him, he is currently leading his like warband on raids on a bunch of Kroot worlds. Kroot are like a minor alien race. They're these dudes. They're one of the stranger ones, right? And right, Iron Teeth loves fighting these guys because when it comes to like close quarters combat, these dudes are savage. So they are a great match for the Orks. The Orks love fighting these dudes in close quarters because they're like quite similar in a way. They're both like Carnage incarnate when it comes to close quarters combat. So Grog Ironteeth is leading his army to fight a bunch of these dudes on a bunch of their worlds. And he is loving every minute of it. Until the arsehole Tau decide they're going to go help their Kroot allies. Because the Tau work while they're alien races. It's like half of their thing. So bunch of Tau turn up to try and defend these dudes. And that's a problem because the Orks were prepared for like close quarters combat, but the Tau are so technologically advanced that they just use tons of long-range artillery and long-range weaponry and stuff. So Grog Ironteeth gets pretty pissed off with this. Like, fuck these guys. They want to use Daka, I'll use Daka. Thus kicks off the War of Daka. So Grog decides, I'm going to fight fire with fire here. And he goes and assembles a new army, right? He builds up his Wa with a bunch of flash gits, tank busters, and freebooters. And just so you know, a flash git is the name for an orc that loves heavy weapons. So think orc with a Gatling cannon made of scrap metal.
Yeah.
Right? Tank busters are anti-tank troops, so they have like rocket launchers and tank buster bombs, which is basically just a big-ass grenade. And freebooters are orc pirates. So Ironteeth is like, fuck you guys, I'm gonna fight fire with fire here, and he gathers up as many of these nutcases as he can, loads his army up with pirates, rocket launcher wielding orcs, and like heavy weapons orcs, and then takes the fight back to the Tau. And pretty quickly, the Tau have to retreat, because fuck this. Like, their whole thing is like, we've all got like Gundam mech suits, so fuck you. And this guy's like, yeah, I've got 40,000 orcs with rocket launchers. Have at me. So yeah, pretty quickly, the Tau are like buried under by his like relentless firepower. And they have to retreat. And basically just they basically just go, fuck the crew, we're not fighting these guys, sack this, and they bail, leaving Grog Ironteeth to take over a bunch of Tau worlds. So part of the Tau domain is now ruled by an orc war boss.
Right.
Fun was had by all. Yeah. So the next one that pops up is a warlord or a war boss called Gazbag. He is a speed freak. He is one of the orcs that like fucking loves going fast, right? Yeah. So he starts.
His name though sounds like douchebag.
It does, yeah. And I feel like that's how the Eldar feel about him. To be honest with you. Yeah. Because this dude decides to lead his army to ransack a bunch of like unprotected Eldar paradise worlds. Right? So these are just like lush garden worlds that are like, you know, utopia. It's like Garden of Eden type shit, where the Eldar just live in peace and chill out. But Gazbag is like, oh, these places are unprotected. Let's fuck them up. Yeah. So he just starts wreaking havoc and destruction, you know, as orcs tend to do. Naturally, the Eldar who find out about this are quite vengeful, as Eldar tend to be. So they start, you know, trying to fight back. They send armies to go and, you know, defend them, defend their worlds. And it turns out Eldar are not great at fighting orcs when the orcs move at like 1,000,000 miles an hour on like crazy half-built tanks and stuff, and motorbikes that should not run ever. So pretty quickly, the Eldar offensive that's trying to defend this world is forced to retreat because they cannot handle the sheer carnage of this orc Wa. And now Gazbag is left to continue his violent crusade across a bunch of Eldar worlds. And now he basically just runs these worlds. He's just conquered them. He just took over, and the Eldar are like, alright, whatever, I don't care. Fuck it. So, yeah, Gazbag just burns these worlds to the ground and then decides he controls them.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a bunch of orc war bosses popping up that are, like, taking over other cultures' areas of space, which is fun. We're liking this. Orcs are expanding their territory. Quite aggressively. Well, they do everything quite aggressively. Orcs greet each other aggressively, typically with a headbutt. They're just an aggressive people.
Yeah.
So, the next one is kind of like a scene-setting one. Because it's not particularly orky, it just really makes a point. Right? So, we're skipping ahead like another decade and a half to 844 of M41. And there's a planet called Hephaestion. Hephaestion, that's what it would be. And there's this guy there, this rogue trader called Maximilian Trusk. And he finds this world and decides he's gonna start like an excavation, like an archaeological dig into some like old ass ruins, right? And the worst there is on this planet is a few orc tribes. So like they're doing this dig, but his soldiers are more than enough to kill the few orcs that are turning up to attack them. It's no big deal, right? And the expedition eventually turns up a cache of like Dark Age technology weapons, which is a huge find, right? These things are worth a fortune, but they're also some of the best weapons humanity's ever had. So it's like, it's a big deal. So the rogue trader begins excavating these, and obviously he's still fighting this, small amount of orcs that are turning up the whole time. Now, this is where the Inquisition turns up and has to stick their nose in somebody else's business, right? So an Inquisitor, Lord Inquisitor Shale, decides to make some demands of the rogue trader. Rogue traders are in no way required to listen to the Inquisition. So he exercises his right to tell the Inquisition to go and fuck themselves pretty clearly. Because the Inquisition demands he turns over the weapons, because heresy and whatnot, and he's like, fuck you, I'm selling them, because they're worth a fortune.
Yeah.
So these two end up with this, like, vendetta against each other. They basically had a pissing contest and came to blows. So the rogue trader ends up in, like, a full-scale war with the Inquisition on this planet. And there's also, like, a growing number of greenskins attacking them at the same time. So the Inquisition and the rogue trader's retinues are fighting inside this dig site, while more and more orcs are pouring in, but they're, like, ignoring them to fight each other because they, like, insulted the other one's honor, or didn't disrespect them or whatever.
Yeah.
Being morons. And it comes to, like, a one-on-one fight between, like, the rogue trader and the Inquisitor personally, and then out of nowhere, this giant orc mech busts through the wall of the dig site, and then, like, tons of, like, a whole fucking assload of orc, a metric shitload of orcs, pile in and murder them all. Now, this isn't particularly important in the grand scheme of things, but it does point out an important lesson here, which is, always keep an eye on your orcs. When there's one, there's 100, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a small amount of orcs.
Nope.
Yeah. So, important lesson. There's always orcs.
Yeah.
And I think I'll get through one more of these events before we round out for today. Because we're coming up to some of the bigger things, some of the more fun things. But I think we'll round out after this last one. So we're skipping ahead a bit further, 11 years to be exact, to 855 M41. And there is a snakebite clan war boss named Hruk Teeth Splinter, which is a disgusting name. I never want to see splintered teeth, ever.
Isn't that like ripping up money for them?
Fair point, actually, yeah. Fair point. Never thought about that. Maybe that's why he's such an aggressive dude, because he's poor.
I don't know. But...
Maybe. But yeah, this dude takes over a place called Corva and enslaves the entire population. So this was like where he grew up. This was his like old stomping ground. He goes back now that he's like big and strong, enslaves the entire population of like his kin, and forces them to build a big ass starship for him. But because he's a snakebite, his whole thing is beast handling, for lack of a better term. He has animals that fight alongside him, right? So the ship has to be big enough for him to take his entire menagerie of like creatures with him. So they build this absolute unit of a starship. And he takes his menagerie on tour and decimates a bunch of shrine worlds. You know what shrine worlds are?
Not too sure.
They're like particularly religious imperial worlds where we have like giant important churches and stuff. There's usually they're related to saints and things like that. So like the defense of these worlds will be based on the ecclesiarchy and things like that. Sisters of Silence might be based there, or sorry, Sisters of Battle might have like a basis there, stuff like that. But it's also common for imperial citizens to do like a pilgrimage along a bunch of them for religious purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, like the pilgrimage to Mecca and stuff like that. Some really religious people will like set themselves out. They have to do like a pilgrimage along a particular set of these worlds for their saints and stuff. This dude uses his giant ship full of animals and stuff to go ransack a bunch of religious shrine worlds, and he takes over after destroying a bunch of them. But to add insult to injury, he also has reportedly been breeding squigoths in a basilica.
Okay.
These fuckers. He is breeding these fuckers in a giant cathedral to the emperor. You know,
Great.
insult to injury. What a guy. I found a note that is like you know, like an additional connotation to this or annotation to this, which is it's his squigoths are notoriously incontinent.
What is that weird word?
Not being able to like control your bladder or bowels.
Oh, okay.
So if he's breeding them in a church to the emperor, this floor is just gonna be like a horse's stable. Really insult to injury there. Megan, but hilarious. What a guy! Yeah. So, Fruit Teeth Splinter now owns a bunch of, like, ecclesiarchy worlds. So, yeah, the important thing to know about Orks so far in the modern day is there's a bunch of, like, war bosses who are still active now who, like, started off by picking a fight with one particular group and then taking over a bunch of their worlds.
Yeah.
So, like, no one is free of orc harassment. Everyone is getting it in the neck from the orcs.
Mm-hmm.
And we are... we've got a few more events before, the smaller ones, before we, like, get to, like, the main event. But we're piling through. So, next time we'll pick up with... oh, God. The next one's actually quite funny. The next one's like a reenactment of a historical event. You know the burning of Alexandria?
No.
Oh, do you know about the Library of Alexandria and all that? No? Ever heard about that?
I can't remember, no.
Oh, don't worry about it then. We'll deal with that next time. We'll start with a history lesson next time. But I think that's a good start to our orc research. What do you think?
Yeah. It's quite alright. It's a lot of details, I will add. It is a lot of details.
You'll know when we get to the important ones. A lot of it's just like, orcs are fucking everyone up. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's like the Tyrannus.
Yeah, exactly.
Too many and too destructive.
Oh, that's it. There's a lot of orcs. They are all over the fucking galaxy. And because of their sheer numbers, they are able to accomplish a lot in a short time. So, yeah, there's a lot of different orc war bosses that are just, like, kicking up shit all over the fucking galaxy. But the thing we're trying to get at here is the sheer scale of the harm orcs are doing in the modern day in a widespread area. But it's led by all different groups. It's not like a unified force. That's the important part. But yeah, there's a couple of, like, main character type things. I'll make a point of, like, telling you when we're getting to one of them, but you'll see what I mean. There's a couple of them have a lot more detailed storylines. Oh God, I feel like this was a good start to season 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, do you want me to round it out now?
I think so. Although it's just occurred to me, I have no idea how long this season's going to be.
Well, strap in and No.
Buckle the fuckle up, kiddies.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to say it.
Yeah.
Well, this
I
has
like your
been,
one too, though.
No. I was not about to say that, Ryan.
I know what you were gonna say, and I love that saying. I say it all the time. But buckle
Yeah,
the
probably
fuckle
why
up
I'm
is a equally useful one.
That is the Orks way to say it. Right?
Yes.
But yeah, we want to thank you guys for listening to this episode, first episode of season 5 of Queen
Yes,
K. Yes, it's been me, Mess, and Ryan, and we will see you in the next one. Take care and peace.
Bye.